Good afternoon, all. This is Ralph Kubek from eWorkplace Apps. Just a mic check. Abhilash, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Very good. Thank you. Again, I'm Ralph Kubek of eWorkplace Apps. Abhilash and Kabir are also on the phone. We appreciate you joining the webinar today, where we're going to give you an overview of our QMS solution, as well as some updates on our process solution. And again, we're going to go through an overview of who we are, the quality solution, a demo of that product, and then the process manufacturing solution. In terms of who eWorkplace Apps is, we're a spin-off of Batchmaster, and as was announced at last year's summit, we've entered into a relationship with Acumatica to work through a couple different applications for them. Part of that is based upon our 30 years of experience in the industry related to both process as well as quality. We have a 30-member team focused in on bringing our quality and process solutions into the Acumatica framework. Those 30 people are some developers, business consultants, implementations, and business analysts. Again, our focus is two primary products for Acumatica, one of them being QMS, quality management, which we're going to focus in on today, process manufacturing that is well under development, and we'll give you a few updates on that, as well as we do some system integration and development services. Why QMS? What's our background, and why did we create a relationship with Acumatica? Because a number of entities, both manufacturing distributors, quality is important. We want an integrated system that helps and streamlines your internal quality needs, helps you meet customer requirements and satisfactions, as well as meet government, industry, and other compliance things that you need to address. Key within the quality management suite of Acumatica is, as you'll see, it's developed using the Acumatica toolset, same database. It's fully integrated into Acumatica, much like the Acumatica manufacturing system which was an ISV product before. The look and feel is exactly the same as you will have in Acumatica. Again, it's all built upon the framework. There are two editions, a manufacturing and distribution edition. The difference between those editions are that in the distribution edition, if you need to do report production or do QC for production when something's finished or in process, right, those are part of the Acumatica production modules. You don't get access to those capabilities. There's a number of different modules that we are creating. Today we're going to go through testing, NC, Kappa, how we do ALQ and sampling. You'll see some details on tool analysis, how we can print certificates of analysis, how we do analytics, and then as the product continues to move forward, we'll be dealing with vendor performance and having more details to control tools and other items. It's designed to help, right? No system coming out of the box is validated. It is your overall system that needs to be validated, right? Your processes as well as your software. So our focus is creating a framework within Acumatica that between Acumatica and ourselves, we could help support your focus on becoming compliant in a variety of these industries, as well as ISO and other certifications. The product was announced at Summit last year. The relationship was announced. We issued our initial release back in April. This is just a quote from one of our early adopter customers. It is now part of general release, and for those of you that were part of the Acumatica launch, you saw that we were featured in terms of officially being a product within the infrastructure Acumatica and participated in the R2 release. Before we delve into the product in detail, particularly for those of you that have Acumatica already, I'd just like to spend a few minutes on this flowchart to explain what you're going to be seeing. The first thing within the Acumatica framework, we needed to create a number of definitions. Tests, test plans, how we're going to sample. Think of those being the pillars on which quality are created. We then move those so that we can associate those details with items. You'll see how we associate those with item classes, how we associate those with business partners, because in some cases, a business partner to a customer is either a customer or a vendor, and how we could have unique test plans down to that level. We also support stability testing. Some people in the food and chemical industry, every 30, 60, 90 days, either for items within their own inventory or potential samples they kept behind. They need to test those. We then embedded triggers into the Acumatica framework so that we could do inspection and receiving, production, shipping, kit assembly. Again, a number of distributors need quality coming in, as well as they have light quick turn manufacturing that is handled within the kitting process. Ad hoc inspections, we just need to inspect something for some reason, and we talked about time-based stability. Then we created two sets of transactions. The first one is what we call QC orders. So if we do need to do an inspection, we generate a transaction. We happen to call that a QC order. That's what we use to manage and control the process, how we collect those values, how you'll see in a few seconds we evaluate those values. And then if something passes, we're going to push it back into inventory. The other set of transactions we're going to go through today are non-performance and CAPA, right? For some of our clients, when something fails, there are situations that they need to create a non-conformance workflow, and we'll see how that happens within our software. And in some cases, after that non-conformance, right, they need to create a corrective action, so they help prevent that from happening again. Eventually, it goes back to the material review board. Someone decides what they're going to do with that product, return it, rework it, scrap it, or potentially put it back into inventory in a different grade or a different version. So with that overview, I'm going to leave my PowerPoint and go into Acumatica. Ablash, if you could just confirm, you could see an Acumatica screen.
Yes, I do.
Okay. So this is the framework. This is the home screen for quality. I'm first of all going to go into setup. Critical in applications. Part of this is how we conform our quality solution to meet what your internal standards are. There's numbering schemes, right? Every transaction, every CAPA, every NC, every sample item that we take needs to have a numbering scheme. So we have a sequence of those. Those are all set up within Core Acumatica. Some people's standard operating procedures allow people to see what the test results need to be. Some don't. So that's a control that we have. Some cases people allow people to override the results. Let's just say the upper limit was supposed to be 1.000. You have a reading of 1.001. Some people have the ability to override that process. So things that, again, take a generic, powerful quality system and then allow it to be contoured to the way you actually want to use the product. A key is this area, location ID. Location IDs in Acumatica, I term as a bin. They're important to the way we've developed QMS. It's how we quarantine material. So what you'll see is every time an item is received, either off the production line or off a PO, we want to put that in a quarantine area, limit what happens so we could put it into an Acumatica bin. We could then use the core Acumatica bin functionality in terms of the item can't be sold, isn't included and available or not. We've added some additional controls that prevent moving in and out of that quality bin unless someone's actually done a QC transaction. So location/bins are critical. A couple setup screens. We not only want to take tests, but we also want to help you evaluate those test results. Many entities just end up thinking that they have critical, medium, and minor severity levels. You could begin to create your own. You'll see how those relate to our evaluation of tests in a few minutes. Test methods, test categories, test groups are tables of controls that you'll see in a second, mainly focused in on being able to do analytics and reporting. A key element is tools. So, right, every situation has cases where we might need to use tools. So we do have a tool master file that allows you to determine whether something's on active, on hold, in calibration, is it retired, and then what the last and next calibration dates are. That allows you to use some standard Acumatica tools to create alerts, whether a tool can be used, whether it can't be used, whether we need to send something over to calibration. So that's part of the setup. Later on, when we get into NC and CAPA, you'll see the details behind these supporting tables that we have. I do want to go into one of the other pillars of how we built the quality system, and that relates to tests. So tests are those things that we want to do to an item. So you begin to define a test. We then have the capability of having alphanumeric, numeric, or Boolean values being yes, no, true, false. If it's going to be a numeric value, we then ask that you provide us the unit of measure that's going to be used. We then, as I indicated, have test categories and test methods, ways that you could assign to the test so that we could do analytics. You assign a tool to an item. These last two columns, I don't want to say we're into scheduling. However, you might have an item that has 3 tests to be performed. You need to send that item out next Wednesday. One of those tests might take 7 days to perform, so that you could go into the system, begin to define how long those tests are going to take in terms of duration. So someone could be alerted, someone could create a report to say, I better start to do this one test, this mode generation test today, because it's going to take 7 days to get it done. I can't start it the day that the test is actually due. The other piece is steps, because what we want to help you do is not only control the tests that you're performing and whether they pass or fail, we also want to help you document what needs to be done before, during, and after a test. So that's where steps come in. The other key aspect of is test plans. So test plans are a group of tests that we put together. I sometimes, as people have heard in the past, refer this to as a template for a variety of reasons as it relates to linkage back to core Acumatica. We have a plan, we have a description, we have a name, we support revisioning as Acumatica does in its bill of materials. We have activity dates in chemicals and food processing. In many cases, how I test things in the summer is different than in the winter, so we could have different tests based upon dates. This is where we take those tests that we've just set up, we identify them, we begin to define a severity level to them for this particular test group, this test plan. We could change some test methods, but more importantly, this screen is used to denote the minimum, target, and maximum value for that test. If it's alphanumeric, what's going to be the response that we're looking for? And then if it's a pass, fail, go, no go, what are we expecting? That checkbox indicates that in this case, the test is going to pass if it's pass. In some cases, right, a failure is really what we're looking for. Test results are critical. We've already talked about severity levels. When we begin to associate this with items in production orders, you'll see that we have rigorous, moderate, and flexible testing. Rigorous might be for a vendor that's on probation, might be for a new part. Moderate might be for a vendor that is good, and we're going to accept a few more samples from them. So this is very important as it relates to how we're going to begin to evaluate tests. So that's the basic setup. There's one other screen that I'm just going to mention. We do have the capability of obviously creating sample sizes. So there's a setup screen, but for the second time, I'm going to pass on that. I'm going to go into inventory. I'm actually going to go into inventory classes first. Remember, we mentioned groups of items. So if you do implement quality, what you see on the item class is a quality control tab. This is where we could denote, we'll copy in that template, if I could use that term. We'll then indicate for this particular test, this particular item class, are the tests going to be rigorous, moderate, or flexible? Inspection, 100% or sampling? If so, what's the sample we're going to do? The various triggers that we have for receiving, shipping, production, ad hoc, and kit processing. So which test plan relates to which test plan. And we have the capability, right, this was a template, so we have the capability of going down here and indicating that while we have this template, for this unique product class, the results need to be different. Beneficial in 2 ways. The first way is that, particularly in setup, or for creating new items and product categories, we have the capability to take these test plans and apply them to all the items that are within that particular item class. The other aspect is that they're associated with an item class, which means when you add a new item from scratch, If you assign it to this class, it's going to inherit the traits or those tests for that particular item. I'm going to jump into the item master file fairly quickly. And I'm going to look at the shell 2. Much like in product classes, once you implement our solution, you have a screen that indicates we have a quality module. Global test plans, again, this could have been inherited from the item class, or I could just denoted it here. Again, rigorous, moderate, sampling plans we use. How's this test going to be, right? An item could be tested one way for receiving, a different way for shipping. The elements of the plan, just like we did at the product class level, we could decide that for this unique item, the test might be different than the common item for that item group. We could add or delete tests from this item. To make this specific, we could have vendor plans, so each individual vendor could have their own test plan. Again, along with rigorous, we might have a situation of our primary vendor versus our secondary vendor. We're going to be testing different things in different ways. Same thing from a shipping aspect. We might have different test plans for shipping something to Walgreens compared to Costco. So that's the linkage as it relates to those test plans into the items. In terms of a bill of material, when we look at the bill of material screen, there's in-process inspection. So I'm going to look at this bill of material. And you can see we've added the capability of indicating, yes, we need QC at this operation step. Again, we picked the plan and the test associated with it, same capability to make those unique. Important to note that this is gating, different than quarantine. Gating just means that what you'll see as we're going through the example today, when something wants to move from operation 10 to 20, the standard Acumatica move transaction, we're going to prevent that from happening until someone signs off on this particular inspection. You notice there's nothing at the last operation of this item. When we looked at the stock code, you saw that there was a production test there. In Acumatica, as you know, there's an unlimited number of ways that you can make an item. We've made the decision to ensure consistency, reliability, and reduce maintenance. We are going to allow you to put the test plan when something comes off that production line at the item level. Therefore, you don't have to go into each individual bill of material way to make it and assign the correct testing when it's going to come off. Clearly, if you make it different ways and there's different tests, then you would be putting some test plans into that final operation. So that's how we link those items in. Now I'm going to go into purchasing one transaction. So this is the standard purchase order screen within Acumatica. Again, from an end user aspect, nothing changes. I'm going to go ahead and write a PO for that shell 2. For today's purposes, I'm just going to order 1, so I don't have to report a lot of different samples. I'm going to save this. I'm going to go to Actions. I'm going to approve. And now I'm going to do a PO receipt. Standard screen, standard everything, right? I have this item set up as lotted. So what I need to do, and you would need to do within Acumatica, is go in and put a lot number in. And I actually have a expiration date associated with this because we do some testing with stability. I've now added that item, and I'm going to go ahead and put in a vendor reference number. I'm going to release. This is really where quality begins to take over. We've talked about quarantining, so you could see within the standard Acumatica, I wrote this purchase order to the warehouse based upon the Acumatica setup. This is the bin that item should be going into. However, because this item is going to be quarantined, inspected, we automatically put that item or did a transfer within Acumatica to move that into a quality location. The person doing the receipt knows there's quality required, and then we begin to display, right, we just created that transaction for the QC item. I'm going to change hats, right, because the receiver on the dock just clicked some buttons and he was done. Lo and behold, I'm the QC person, right? I've changed hats. And now I could go into my dashboard, a number of different ways to look at this particular item for this particular item. And I could begin to see that we have a dashboard. These are all changed. I'm going to drill into QC receiving. for this particular item. Oh, I picked a different item. So at the bottom of the screen, this is where we begin to enter those results in. Let me go back and find that particular QC order. There it is. Right, it's a shell 2. This is where security comes into place. The bottom of this screen is what we would call a QC analyst, someone who could enter in results, and that's all they could do. Notice we have an assigned to, because in some cases customers have specific people to perform certain tests. I'm going to go in and indicate that I'm going to pass this. I am going to fail this item, and I'm going to put this as 179, so that fails. I'm actually going to fail this other one too. I'm going to put in 0.5. So now I've had 2 items fail. On this test, right now we have a number of different things that we could do for this item. I could put this item on hold. I could add more samples. Again, maybe based upon your sampling, I could add more samples, and the more I test, the more that pass. They're going to be able to pass this result. I could actually go back if I wanted to and change this, which I am going to do. I'm going to say, you know what, I misread this, and I actually did indicate that it's 181. For audit purposes and make certain we can be validated, we're keeping track of all that history, as well as we can begin to assign alerts to this transaction to let someone know that Ralph went in and changed the results. I'm purposely going to fail that one again. So that's done. There is built on the Acumatica mobile platform the capability of doing the entry behind the screen using that Acumatica mobile platform. I'm now going to change hats within our security module, because there's another person, a QA person, who's could evaluate those results, and it's going to tell me it's going to fail. It's going to fail because it knows the number of the quantity, it knows the samples I've taken, the samples that passed. It's looking at the resulting criteria that we would want, and the competency indicated that obviously that item failed. Now that it failed, what I'm going to do is I'm going to post those results. I'm going to post these results because these items have been rejected, and since they're in a quarantine location, our standard operating procedure says that I need to move those into a material review board area. So I'm going to go ahead and post those results. That item is now out of quality's hands and into the hands of those people that handle those items. Now I could go in, again, there's ways that we'll be able to trigger these automatically, but now I need to create an NC, right? Something failed. You can see there's 2 ways to do this. I could do it by lot, which means I'm going to get 1 NC for everything that just failed, both those tests, or notice I could do it based upon tests, because maybe a different person handles individual tests. But I'm going to go ahead and create that NC. I've now created the NC transaction. For speed today, rather than going to the dashboard, I'm just going to drill into that NC transaction. This is the second transaction we've talked about. You can see I'm now in the phase that calls details, and I'm just going to type in the fact that I looked at the part. It is bad. At the bottom of the screen, I see all the details and can drill back to where that item came from. I'm going to indicate that I'm complete with that step, and now I have that process completed. I now would have to do some root cause analysis. Again, a table that you could be set up to indicate that you have a variety of these, plus you could just enter in some comments if you would like to. I then finish this transaction. Again, I could have an unlimited number of details going through this. Eventually, someone will go in and say, I've looked at the root cause analysis, and I have approved that. So we will document that as in terms of the root cause analysis is done. I could, if I wanted to, create a corrective action for that process. Right, Windows screens, you need to refresh it in order to see that screen, but we now see we have a COPPA assigned to that particular item. Then I would finish this off, right? What actions did I take? And I'm just going to say, you know, destroy or pick up, send back to vendor. However, I would like to close this particular NC. So now this particular NC is done. Again, I need to sign off on this by hitting save and creating the action. We have a complete event history that's letting you know who did what when. And I could actually, from this screen now, again, for purposes of today, taking a lot of shortcuts, but now I'm going to just drill into the corrective action screen. Typical corrective action screen, where first of all, there's an origination tab. I could then do some investigation, adding the details the same way we just saw. What is the corrective action? What's the preventive action? And then someone eventually does some verification. So that is, again, the complete circle from taking an item, assigning some tests to it, doing those tests, having a situation where it failed, and then having the ability to process an NC and then a CAPA. An NC, by the way, could actually be used for customer complaints. When you looked at that NC screen, you saw the fact that I could indicate this is coming from a quality inspection, or did an end user actually call me with a request that I want to use. I'm going to quickly go into production next, and I'm not going to step through the entire production process, but I'm going to just show you the first gating process we have. So I'm going to create an order for this exhaust system. I'm just going to create one. I'm going to release this item as soon as it gets saved. Now that I release it, somewhere along the line, there's going to be a move transaction, right? Someone's saying I'm done with operation 10, and I want to take this off hold. I'm going to release it. Quality saying no. Again, we're gating that item. We're gating it so that we can't move forward with that particular operation step or move it because we do have that item that is still needs to be quality controlled. Again, I'll change hats, and I will go back to my dashboard, and I will see that I have an in-process inspection. Again, we could have separate dashboards for separate steps. I'm now going to go in, right, same transaction screen. Important to note, and I missed this when we were doing receiving, notice there's some user-defined fields here. You know, part of a quality process might be not only am I gathering test results, but I might need to gather some information, right? Vendor part number, an expiration date, a heat date, things that might not relate to testing. So we have that capability to allow you throughout the process to accumulate this. Maybe for a WIP process, they're putting the machine number that they just used into that particular field. I'm going to go into these items, and these are both numeric, so I'm going to pass both of these items, and the same processes we've had before, right? We evaluate these. They're going to pass based upon or fail based upon what we're going to do, and then I could post these results. These post results, there's no posting, right? This is not inventory. That's still WIP, because now what I could do is I could go back in the production order and find that production order and then move it. And now, because I could have gotten alerted in a number of different ways, I could go into this particular QC order. I should say this production order. And then I could do this move command. And then I'm going to take it off hold. I'm going to release it. Notice it's now released because that quality step is done for that particular item. So now we're advancing into the production cycle. It's handling all the inventory transactions in the background and lot and all the backflushing of material and labor. So sometimes this process takes a little while. I'm then going to go in and do one more move. I'm going to indicate that I'm going to take this off hold. I'm going to release this item. This is where quality begins to take over because remember we had that inspection at that last operation step. So now this is going to do a similar thing that it did when we did that incoming inspection. It was supposed to go into the wholesale warehouse, was supposed to go into receiving, but no, because this item needs to be quarantined after it's produced, it's going to be put into this particular quarantine bin. And then there's a QC transaction. I'm not going to drill into that particular QC order because for lack of time, plus, again, the screen's going to look exactly the same as the other ones. So that's how that process works. I'm going to go just into a sales order. I'm just going to enter a sales order for an item and just show you the slight difference in terms of what we see within order entry. I'm going to order this item, and I'm going to order a shell. Oh, always be good if I keyed in the into the right field, right? That was branch. No, it's never going to return shell into the branch field. So I'm going to do a shell. We then enter this. You can see that we now have the system indicating that this item does require QC. So now the process is that I would enter that order. At the appropriate time, I would do an allocation of that item, and then I would go up to my screen. I would generate a QC order out. Now QC is aware that they have something that needs to be inspected. They would inspect that, and then once the inspection is done, someone would come back and then create the shipment for that item so it could go out. Again, the QC order that's going to be generated is going to handle in the same process that you saw those others. So that is a overview of the processes as it relates to receiving and shipping. A couple other items that are in process, if I could use that term, the associated test plans. What we realize is that entities, let's pick on a food entity that's receiving some material, 3 items on a truck, they might actually have to do 4 different tests. Each of those items that are coming off the truck need to be inspected to their particular inspection plans. However, also what we might need to do is verify the truck was correct, right? We might have a purchase receipt with a truck inspection that tests was the door locked, was it clean? We might want to record the temperature if it was a frozen food truck. So we also have these associated test plans so that, again, we could validate the process surrounding or happens before. Same thing happens in production order. Maybe if you're in a situation of having something need to go through an oven for smelting or sealing, you could have a associated inspection plan when that production order is created. Someone needs to verify that the machine was clean. Someone might need to enter in the temperature of the oven to validate that it's the right temperature to start. Maybe there's a conveyor moving through that particular oven and they need to record the speed results again. So not only are you documenting that the item is correct, but also kind of that the process and the machinery are working as intended. There is the ability to create certificates of analysis and a variety of other reports. I think I have one at 108. I'm going to run this report. These are all standard reports using the Acumatica framework. You decide when you're beginning to develop these whether you want the specifications to be printed, whether you want the values to be printed, as well as any other user-defined information could be printed on this form, right? Maybe we were needed to enter in a QC number from the particular vendor. If it's within the Acumatica database, you'll be able to get it to print on these forms that you might need to provide to an entity. You saw dashboards. Ablash on the phone, he has nicer dashboards than I do, and part of that is he has spent some time creating some control charts. So we are containing all the history of these items, so we could, on our dashboard, potentially begin to show a control chart showing all these readings, right? We're doing an inspection every 15 minutes. We see those inspections. We know the highs, the lows, and the target, and then we could begin to get alerts when we're over, when those alerts are maybe within 5% of what that limit is. So that's quality from the aspect of, again, how we set up tests, why we set up tests, how we link those over into the item file, and I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint to wrap up. I'm going to go back one screen. So hopefully what you saw was in the setup, the capability of having the infrastructure you need for QC purposes, how we link those into items and item groups, make things unique for customers as well as vendors. We didn't go through the setup of stability testing, but again, you can have tests that you want to test something every 7 days, every 30 days. You saw the various triggers and how they work. We stepped through the application, the transaction that we use to not only collect that data, but how we use our sampling and ALQ rules to evaluate whether something passes or fails, and now how we could push those into a non-conformance CAPA process to make certain that this is a closed loop system and we're helping improve quality as we go forward. I'm going to go in to just give a quick update. That's the end of quality. I'm going to give a quick update as we kind of get to the end. We are working on process manufacturing, much like you saw in our quality system. It's natively built within the framework of Acumatica, totally integrated. We're working on a number of different modules. In terms of the Acumatica suite, most importantly is we're on target for an early adopter version. The first release of the product is going to include 3 modules: a formula management module, a process bill of material module, right? We have people that manage formulas. That formula goes into a number of different products. So we manage that formula. We then manage the products that we're making. And then there's going to be a production order management system related to properly managing the production process of quality. Process and discrete are slightly different, right? We have line level losses. We have losses, right? Every time we put something maybe in a mixer, we're going to lose 2% of that. So we need to address those items in production management. We're also need to deal with co-products and byproducts that are going through the process. So those versions are going to be targeted for early adoption in late September. We actually are almost completed with the formula management module and a great deal of the process bill of materials. So if there's some interest in beginning to kind of poke around to see what's in formula management process bill of materials, you can contact your local Acumatica partner, and we could begin to introduce you to what those screens and processes are going to look like. The whole aspect of quality process manufacturing is related to help Acumatica address the needs in all these marketplaces. You know, as you heard from the summit, a lot of this, and I mentioned this beginning, is based upon the IP that we've gathered over the years as Batchmaster. Important to point out that this is not Batchmaster just being integrated with Acumatica. It is a complete product written from the ground up. Therefore, if some people know Batchmaster, Batchmaster has a bakery vertical. In the initial releases of our Acumatica process manufacturing suite, that bakery vertical won't be there. So there's going to be little parts that obviously are going to be pulled in. Another place is meat processing. Will our product be able to support people in meat and cheese manufacturing? The answer is yes. But in some of those industries, catch weight's important, right? Catch weight doesn't not only relate to manufacturing, but it relates to how we buy things and how we sell things. So again, we'll be able to deal with the meat processing industry, and you saw on a roadmap, dealing with, in a future release, being able to support catch weight again, because we need a holistic solution for meat and cheeses. And today, are some meat people able to use process manufacturing because they don't sell or they don't manage themselves on a catch weight basis? The answer is yes, but some do. So those are the things that we will have to do in terms of the discovery process as we help you out. So that brings us to the end of the 45-minute session. We have periodically. There's a few minutes left. Kabir, Ablash, any questions from anyone?
We don't have any questions in the question panel as of now.
Ablash, any questions on your side? Any comments that we've periodically heard from either end users, prospects, or partners, or information from other calls?
Yeah, so we often get this question about support for mobile, handle device. Do we support, a mobile application for recording the test results? That's one. So yes, we have a mobile version of QMS as well. So user can directly go and key in the test results to the handle device. That's one, I think. Usually we get that question quite enough.
I think the other one I answered right after a time we begin to put the questions in our presentation. The other one was, there were some questions before, what's the difference between the distribution version and the manufacturing version? Again, we wanted to, it's a pricing vehicle, right? Because why should a person who just does kit need quality from a receipt aspect and a kitting process, pay for some features that exist in Acumatica modules they don't have. So that was one of them. We've changed the script a little bit to show you how we support serial and lot controlled items. And also, I think what you saw on that screen was the ability for us to have recall type reports, both forward and backwards, so we could go in and indicate we got this lot number from Ablash, where'd it go, because there's a problem. Flip side is we could call up the lot number of a finished good we just created, right, maybe through an NC, and then we could begin to see everyone else that acquired that item as well as the raw material came from. So those were two questions, as well as I think this is the first time on one of these webinars we've showed the integration with the NC COPPA process, as well as spoke through a little bit about the inspection process. So as I kind of look through the notes from prior sessions, that's what we have. In wrapping up, again, we appreciate your time. There are some recordings from the R2 launch. There was a session on QMS, similar to probably the one we did today. I did it, I think it was pretty close. Also, there are 4 separate recordings, each 8 to 10 minutes long, that take, for lack of a better term, a rather deep dive into the setup processes, into the purchase process, into the manufacturing process, and into the shipping process. So again, feel free to contact your Acumatica partner. They could get a hold of us, and obviously we'll chat with you about needs one-on-one. Partners will help out with end users, and we could share some of those recordings as another vehicle for education. So with that, if there's no other questions, oh, go ahead.
We have one question, Ralph. They want to know, how much can we scale this down? So is the solution, can we scale down the solution?
I'm going to answer that by saying scale it down from this point. What we do have some clients doing is, let's just say they have a checklist of 50 items that they need to check off on an incoming receipt. The way we handle document and document management is the same as, obviously, it's an Acumatica tool. We have some clients that skinny it down, that say, you know what, I don't need that testing screen to have all 50 tests on it. I have some other vehicle that I'm checking off now. And so those clients take that 50-line test. They put 2 or 3 major questions in the testing area and say, yes, did it conform to these 3 things? And then they take some of that other paperwork and attach it. So if they mean by skinny it down in terms of making those processes easier, you know, the answer is yes. Clearly that question could mean a lot of different things. So feel free to reach out to your partner, and then we could kind of chat what you meant. The other thing that I just looked at that has come up, we do support 2020 R1, and clearly we are part of the launch for R2. So our R2 will be supported also within the framework of what we're talking about. So anything else, Kabir?
No, that was the only question.
Okay. Again, we appreciate everyone's time. Feel free to reach out to us or your partner, and be glad to engage with you, do a discovery, right? This is all about solving business problems. So what we need to do is understand your exact operation and provide you all the details you need to make an informed decision. Hopefully, in many cases, it's our quality solution, but more important, we're in the education business to make certain that we understand your needs and see how best to apply our tool to meet those. So with that, everyone have a great Thursday. Be safe, and have a good Friday, and hopefully everyone enjoys the weekend that's coming pretty quickly. Thank you all.
Thank you.